Duh. What? No. Turn off the front thingy. How do you turn off the front thingy? Can you not do that, please? Okay, so I guess we're going to have to do this the entire time with that thing blinding me. Which means that it's going to drain my battery. Which means I think I need to plug this in. Okay. So, we are talking about how to avoid going blind while staring into your camera thing, opening, aperture, lens. Dead man driving, except I'm not driving. I'm actually at home, which should be able to let me concentrate more on what I'm saying if it weren't for the fact that I've got a floodlight on me right now. It is 16/11/24, Thanksgiving, and I'm not with anybody this evening, which is why I'm doing this instead of doing other stuff. I don't even know how I would go about hanging out with other people, because you know what's going to happen if I ask somebody out, or ask somebody to come over? I've got something else planned. But guess what? I don't have anything planned, so I'm just going to be doing this. So I left off talking about the cinematography of it, and now I'm going to continue with the editing. I guess that's where I left off. Alright, so the editing of this. You've got to remember, I watched this like 2 or 3 months ago. I mean, this was back when I was still at my other apartment, so this was at least 2 months ago. So I don't really remember what happened. I don't even know if I'm within frame of my own camera. Okay, so blah blah blah, stuff happens. Alright, so the movie opens up with credits, which is again a no-no, because you're just stalling for the story getting started. I don't know of too many other things where I would endorse anything other than a cold opening, which is what I'm talking about, what I'm suggesting. They've got this long sequence where it's starting up, where they're introducing each one of the characters, like each one is turning to the next, like in the boat, and they're kind of just doing an introductory thing to let you get to know their character. Like, they'll do some gesture like throwing up, or like just covering their mouth or something, or like some facial expression. And it's not a realistic thingy, because it's rear screen projection, but that's really more of a nitpick for cinematography than it is for editing. It doesn't really add anything to the story to introduce them like that, and it just kind of stretches things out. They've got a lot of characters in this movie, and in order for them to all have a significant story, they really only concentrate on maybe half of the characters at most. So I guess it's okay that they've got 12 characters. It kind of makes it a little bit episodic, and most of the time, and then in some of the time it makes it really episodic. Because it's like, alright, we gotta do the thing where we're looking at the statues getting destroyed while we're not looking. I'm avoiding eye contact with this thing for a reason, and that's because it's really, really bright. Does the story take a long time to get going? They're kind of all just trying to figure out why they're there at first, and once they're there, they realize they don't want to be there. As things become increasingly dangerous. Because they're like, okay, so now we know we're here, we have to figure out who the murderer is, but there's no immediate risk. I think my chicken is ready to eat. So I'm just going to pause now. I'll just take this with me. I'm coming, chicken. Have you reached full deliciousness yet? I like my chicken extra crispy. Yeah, no, I want some more crunch with this. So yeah, I'm glad that it ends very, very soon after the finale of the movie. Like, it's like they just have their explanation and then the movie ends. And you understand what happens to the characters after they've left. They don't just spend a long time just dragging everything out after the denouement. Which is a good thing. I can go anywhere with this camera, so I don't have to just stay in my room. I'll just keep it pointed up most of the time so you can't see how messy my room is. Whoops, too late. What? Anyway, Um, it moves pretty quickly. I feel like I talked about this before, though. Like, I thought I wrote it down on a piece of paper, but I never ended up transferring it over. I think I did, though. I think maybe I just stopped, like, partway through talking about it. I mean, the editing is... This is probably the worst angle for you guys, because you could probably see right up my nose. Just don't look, okay? I mean, this podcast used to be an audio-only thing. And it used to actually be a podcast instead of a vlog. And it used to actually be a vlog before it was a movie review thing. It's not the slickiest, trickiest editing thing. It's just kind of more utilitarian. It relies on suspense. But, you know, not in a poorly executed Hitchcock way, where it's just, oh, we're going to slow everything down and that will make it more tense. I'm not really a fan of the way that Hitchcock did suspense. He's called the master of suspense, but really it's like, yeah, that's making things more slower and arduous is not a good way to enhance tension. I think increasing the danger and increasing the factor of the unknown, that you don't know where the danger is coming from and what it wants, that is probably the much better way of doing it. And as a result, this movie is more suspenseful than Hitchcock film. And I'm hoping Hitchcock didn't direct this so that I'm not like... If that's the case, I'll just say Hitchcock's other films. Like somebody who actually knows what they're talking about. And I think by now I actually do kind of know what I'm talking about, since I've reviewed like over 1 movies. So have I said enough to really give it a rating? I haven't really talked about the middle of the movie enough. It's probably split apart into multiple acts. You know, like movies of the era, you know, you'd think they would be, because it's based on a play. But it doesn't feel like a play because they've got more than enough location variety to make it so it doesn't feel like one. So if I were to split into an act, there would be the prologue, or I guess it would be the overture, where they're just kind of giving you a preview of what's going to be in the movie, just by introducing their cast of characters, which is, what do they call it when you've got a reoccurring cast of characters? Not an entourage. It's when you've got people that keep coming back from previous productions. So it's like the same band of people from like The Lady Vanishes. Ensemble, that's what it is. Oh yeah, this is so going on Instagram. I've got a glass of bourbon and okay, no, it's unsweetened iced tea. Actually, it is sweetened, but it's with artificial sweeteners, which are much better for you than regular sugar. So yeah, you got the entourage being introduced. That's the first act. Then you've got the revelation of why they're there. That's the second. Then you've got the die-off starting. That's the third. Then you've got them trying to figure out who the killer is and who each other are at the same time. That's the fourth. And then you've got a big die-off starting where people are just trying to survive. So that's 5. And then you've got the revelation and the end of the movie. So there's 6 acts. And they spend most of the time in the first one. And it takes a while to get to the tense part, so I'd say the editing does lag in that area. But there aren't any holes. If there are holes, it's more because of Agatha Christie's writing. Like because of the story and not because of the editing. So the thing is, and this is something my mom gripes about, and I agree with her on this, Agatha Christie doesn't do a very good job of dropping clues to where you can figure it out for yourself. It's like, once they reveal something, there's really no way you could have figured that out on your own. I mean, there's a million different things you could have guessed at, but the specific thing that it comes out as being, you can't have predicted that. It just kind of falls into the character's laps. You have to just wait and see. That's unpredictable in a bad sense. A good story will drop hints about what it could be and ends up being more complex than what you could have imagined, or has the most interesting arrangement of the different elements. Like it can either be like a binary thing, 0, 1, next thing 0, 1, next thing 0, 1. So you can guess all these different combinations. I can say, okay, the final result's going to be a 7. Well, it turns out the final result's a 3. Now you had all the information that you could put together to where it could have been a 3, but it ended up, your guess ended up being a 7. So you must have missed one of the switches. So it's through no fault of the writer that you couldn't figure out. They gave you everything you needed, and they made it unpredictable. Or at least difficult to put together on your own. They put it together in what would make the best story. And when you do figure out a mystery on your own, it ends up being satisfying. People come up with headcanon all the time, and sometimes I'll actually agree with them. Like, and it ends up being better than the actual movie. Somebody said they wish that Captain America actually had... Okay, spoiler alert if you haven't seen Civil War, just stop watching the rest of this thing. Watch Civil War, because it's a better movie than... And then there were none. So, if you have watched it, then you can go ahead and listen to what I'm about to say. But if you haven't, it's better. It's better that you watch that instead of listening to a really long review on a okay movie. What's wrong, Samson? You're always panting. Anyway, the actual comics of Civil War have been out for much longer than the movie. But someone was saying they wish that the way it had ended was if Cap had killed Iron Man. Because it would have been a huge twist, because you've got these two major characters in this intractable conflict, but they could still mend their fences and come back together as friends. But if one of them kills the other one, there is no going back from that. And that would really provide a concrete way in which the villain wins and, provides a real strong motivation to defeat the villain and change the character's life after that. At the end of Civil War, both of the characters are still kind of locked in a stalemate. Which is kind of satisfyingly dissatisfying. I'm not going to bother explaining that, just because I've already kind of wandered too far off of what I was about to say. How did that even connect to this story? I was just talking about how it's unpredictable. In a bad way. You want decisions to mean something. And at the end of the movie, he doesn't quite get his way. He got his way like with 10/12 of the characters, but he didn't get what he wanted because he wanted to kill the last two. So he fell short of his goal. Actually, it's more like 11/12, because the girl's sister, she's still out there. She took the blame for her sister's crime. So I guess in one of those kind of Alan Moore things, you know, where you're picking characters from different stories and putting them all together, her sister would probably be one of those characters where, even though you never see her in the story, she kind of becomes a villain that they've hinted at, but they never actually show. Because her sister got away with murder. Oh, is that another train of thought, too? Oh, yeah. About how the unpredictability was a bad thing. And so it didn't kind of really matter what outcome it was. Yeah, I mean, that's one of the bad things about having just a random ending. It doesn't matter which random thing they pick, you know? But you're supposed to treat it like it does. If you've got an outcome that's there for a reason and you're foreshadowing it, it makes sense and it feels like it fits. But if you've got an RNG going and you get an outcome, you're like, well, so what? It could just have as easily have been a 3 as it was a 7. What does it matter what the actual outcome was? Hello?